The Drink Beer, Think Beer podcast is sponsored by Beer Edge. I'm Andy Crouch, the co-founder of Beer Edge, along with my partner and your podcast host, John Hall. John and I work hard to bring you fresh and insightful content related to the ever-changing world of craft beer. We're passionate about beer and independent journalism. If you're interested in supporting Beer Edge, visit our website, beeredge.com, which is updated regularly with new content, interviews, and articles. Please also consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your episodes. You can also subscribe to the Beer Edge newsletter on our website. Is there anyone you think that we should be talking to? Please drop us a line at andy@beeredge.com with your thoughts. And as always, thanks for your support.
Hi, this is John Hall, and welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. Please remember to leave a review. Those guys over at Graining In started a comment contest, and while I thought it was an imaginary thing, it now seems that they're winning, and we can't have that. So please do your part and head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave some words about this show. Okay, on to it. There's no shortage of big personalities in the beer world, and people who just seem to love life. And this week, I'm talking with one such brewer, Alex Lovinggood of Barn Town Brewing in Iowa. More with him in a moment, but first, I'm happy to tell you that this episode is produced by Beer Edge. Check out beeredge.com for articles, podcasts, and to subscribe to the newsletter written by myself and Andy Crouch. Also, be sure to follow Beer Edge on social media at The Beer Edge. So, Alex Lovinggood has been in the beer business for less than a decade, but he's made a lasting impact wherever he's gone. He was a teacher and a bartender before he got into brewing, and he started like so many others, as a volunteer washing kegs and learning the trade from time spent in various hands-on experiences. He worked at Temperance Brewing, Atlas, when it was still called that, and later Brickstone, all in Illinois. And he's been a major force behind the Festival of Wood and Barrel-Aged Beer, also known as FOBAB, and worked to help grow and shape the Illinois Craft Brewers Guild. In November, he moved a little bit west to Barn Town Brewing in Iowa, where he's now a brewer. In this show, we talk about IPA, new styles of beer, food influences, festivals, and more. Alex spoke to me using a Bluetooth and while on the highways and the back roads of Iowa. And I started off by asking him, what's making him happy these days? Here's our conversation.
My children, there's a lot of darkness in the world right now, and there's just a lot of bad stuff going on. And, going home and seeing my two little daughters, my wife's expecting a third. My wife and I, rather, I guess, are expecting a third at the end of this year. So, just kind of looking forward to that. I'm really happy that I have supportive people around me, from ownership and the brewery to coworkers and all of that. That makes you happy, when people support you and, you have people that love you around you.
Support is something that I know so many of us need right now, and you're in this sort of interesting position where you moved your family from Illinois to Iowa towards the end of 2019. You probably just had a few weeks to break in your new boots at the new brewery before the world got turned upside down for COVID. Were there things that you wanted to or were thinking about in January that have just been totally derailed?
Oh God, yeah. We luckily we had our third year anniversary party weeks before the shutdown, and that was like the big thing on much of January and February, and that was in like the first week of March was that. But beyond that, we were going to host a kind of we were calling it the Barn Town Get Down, kind of 70s, 80s funky music, and just invite all of our friends from breweries around the nation. You look in Chicago and on the East Coast and West Coast and in the South and Florida and all these states, there's that one festival that everyone goes to that, is it. And those are a lot of our friends. And there was nothing in the Midwest, save for a few in Chicago. But, and our Midwest of Iowa, there was nothing. So we wanted to do that, and that was supposed to be in May 23rd, and that was like kind of the big thing. And we were truly heartbroken when we had to cancel that, but we're coming back stronger, hopefully, maybe for 2021 with that.
This idea that's really sort of popped up in the last couple of years of brewery invitational beer festivals is, I know, a lot of fun for the consumers who come. It's a lot of fun for the brewers who get to travel to different parts of the country and do collaboration beers and to meet a new fan base and to just sort of hang out with like-minded people. It's an incredible pain in the ass for the brewers that put it on, and an incredible expense as well.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious as to why, like, what drives a brewery like yours to do that?
I think it's selfish reasons, to be honest. It's you strive to be the best, and I think most people would say that. You don't get in business to be mediocre or just to do average. You want to be the best, right? And you want to be surrounded by the best. And it was a lot of work even building up to where we were before we had to cancel too. So.
But I striving to be the best is one thing, but like, is this just an opportunity then to, I don't want to say show off to your peers, but I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out sort of like the motivation behind it.
Yeah, no, I think that's part of it too. It's to show off and showcase what you are and what you're capable of.
Yeah.
Our plan, we were going to, what you see similar to some of the other ones, we were going to try to release, we had plans on releasing 2 or 3 barrel aged beers and a handful of IPAs and, other, pastry sours and stouts and such. So, it is definitely, but it's also, back to the selfish thing, it gets all your friends to you. So you actually don't have to travel to go somewhere, which is half the fun, right? But,
yeah. But you get to show off your own backyard and everything.
Yeah.
What happened to some of those beers that you were planning on making? Some of the IPAs I know you can turn quickly, but
we still
stuff,
kind of when it came down to I believe it was March 15th and we got shut down, we kind of didn't know where we were going to go. So we, being a smaller 10-barrel system, we were able to pivot pretty quickly to just start packaging everything. So a lot of those beers that we had in mind for there, we still brewed and released throughout the last 6 months. They just, were a normal, IPA release on a Tuesday, or, pastry sour on that Tuesday. And then, we kind of snuck in some of the bigger beers. We had also had, I think, 4 collaborations planned for the week before. And those have obviously, we had to cancel those. And so those are, we're still trying to knock those off now that kind of people are feeling a little bit more comfortable to go to other breweries and do collaborations now.
You've done a lot of collaborations in your day and over the course of your career at the various breweries that you've worked at. I'm always curious as to the mind of the brewer when it comes to starting to map out a collaboration process. Where does it start for you?
So for us, it starts, you got to get everyone on the same page as to what style you want to brew, right? And so for us, when we do a collaboration, we want it to typically be a little bit more special than something we'd normally brew. So, we'll brew a big stout or a sour, something along those lines. And then, just kind of figuring out what adjuncts you want to use if you're adjuncting it. And then, really, the hosting brewery is the one putting all the legwork in, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as ordering ingredients and really coming up with the recipe. Everyone we throw the recipe over to the other person for comment, and they're usually like, hey man, it's your house, kind of what you feel comfortable with. But also, hey, maybe I've used this grain or this supplier or, this yeast or certain adjunct, whatever it is, to try to get it. And that's, I think, the really fun part about collaborations is that, you are going to somebody else's house and you're really seeing what they do and how they do it. So, as brewers, we should always be learning and always be looking for a reason to expand our knowledge and not settle. So, seeing what they do and seeing their processes or them seeing ours, just asking questions is my favorite part about collaborations, And then, you get to hang out with some of your very good friends and drink beers all day. So
yeah, and go to the fancy restaurants in town or the good, the good places in town, and then
the real good dive bars as well.
Absolutely, and then write it off to the company, which is that's always the best part as well. During COVID, a lot of the conversations that I've been having have been centered around people thinking about education and sort of reprioritizing things in their home life, in their personal life, in their work life as well. You mentioned education. You mentioned, learning new things or focusing on new things when it comes to collaboration. Has there been anything that you have been keen on learning more about or putting your attention brewing wise over the last couple of months to sort of like help you brew down the line?
Our thing for most of the time was, I think like most businesses at the front, was just to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we were just, we were able to pivot and go to all cans. We had a good stock of cans at the time, so we just put everything into cans at the time. And then, now that we're kind of out of that, we were able to open up, at limited capacity. Now is the time where we're kind of slowing down. And, I've been in my head and talking with our team. I've been wanting to do just like a lactose driven IPA. And, just kind of, not a milkshake necessarily, but just kind of to add a little bit of sweetness and some of that body to it.
Well, how is it? How is there lactose, but it's not a milkshake? Is it?
Well, there's no vanilla, just hops and lactose.
Okay.
To me, a milkshake is vanilla, lactose, and that's how I.
And then puree and everything else, yeah.
Yeah, and we do our fair share of those too. It's 2020, so and it's beer, and there's room to be traditional, and there is room to be creative and think outside of the box. But we could talk for hours on that.
Well, and we'll see where this goes. But I'm curious though, just about what you want the lactose to do, what you want the lactose to in this beer that you're describing now.
Yeah, just kind of give it some more sweetness on the back, and just kind of soften it up, and make it nice and creamy, and just complement whatever hops we're putting in there.
You also mentioned pastry sours.
Yeah.
That is something that I am not super well versed in. I'm learning more and more about pastry stouts all the time. But what's your definition of a pastry sour, and what's a good example of it?
Yeah, so ours would be we do based off of pastries. We do a blueberry muffin sour. So we put just loads and loads of blueberry puree in there, and graham cracker, and a little bit of vanilla, and lactose, and heavy lactose to kind of sweeten it up, so it's not overly tart. So yeah, we kind of just took instead of pastry stout, we put sour afterwards, and kind of brew it the same way, but as a kettle
yeah,
stout.
a traditional pastry stout, or traditional pastry sour, just like they have done for centuries.
Centuries, yes.
Yeah, the finest brewing schools in the world. Once you master it, you're ready to go off into the world. It's like an omelet at the Culinary Institute. Is there anything you won't do, beer-wise? Is there anything sacred anymore?
So I've been brewing for 7 years now, John, and coming from a position as a production brewer, mostly in the beginning of my career. This is my time now that I can have fun and really, really get off the rails and think outside the box on the beers. As far as some things, Sean Burns is a very good friend of mine, and he put lactose in a Hefeweizen, and I was, we were all in a group text razzing him about that. But it was a delicious beer. So, I don't think there's anything that can't be done. We have a pickle beer, because we're in Iowa and the state fair is, sacred out here. So,
yeah, you have
to
to forgive my jersey for showing. I'm not sure how pickle and the Iowa State Fair go together.
It's like the Midwestern Ranch. It's just both of them are very similar.
I'm still not. Are there like pickle contests or something? Like, are people, or is this that thing I was seeing online where people were putting pickle spears into like a blonde ale or something?
No, this is there's just it started for us just there's booths that do deep fried pickles, that do pickles on a stick, all that stuff. It's just a fair food.
Okay.
And so we had a guy reach out to us to wanted to brew a pickle beer, and we've been doing it for about 3 years now. And this year we put it into cans. We packaged about 280 cases, and we sold out of it in a week.
Are you using actual pickles?
Yeah. So we being a brew pub, we use the pickles. So we will use them with the beer. So it's
wait.
Like
you dropped out for a second on your headphones. Alex,
sorry, say that again?
Yeah, no, you dropped out for a second with your headphones.
Yep.
So
that was it connected me to Bluetooth. Yeah, no, so it's we use a golden ale base, and then blend in actual pickle juice into it, and like rest it on there.
Okay, so you're using more of like the brine as opposed to the actual cucumber, pickled cucumber. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's different types of pickles that are out there. You have your sour and your half sour and your dill and bread and butter. Is there what kind of brine do you guys use?
We're using dill.
Okay. Have you tried other ones as well? Is there a variety pack?
We were kind of joking.
You're like, there will be now. Yeah.
Now that you put it in my head, we were joking about that, but no, we just do the dill, and it's more kind of a kind of a real nice dill garlicky forward pickle that we use. So it was actually I was a skeptic on the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then I tried some other pickles from other breweries, and then tried ours. And I was like, okay, it's a good balance of beer and pickle, whereas some of them was just like drinking pickle juice.
Well,
and,
sure. I mean, I'm just thinking of the acidity that comes with the brine, as to having that balance, because a blonde ale, you can steamroll over that pretty easily as a base style.
Yep.
So you're keeping the acidity in check. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of people, it seems like, are using would do a sour base for theirs.
Yeah.
Is what I've been seeing to kind of balance it. I think that would be just way too acidic. But yeah, it's yeah.
You're no stranger to good food, though. So I'm curious as to what you find your pickle beer pairs best with. Where do you put it food wise?
I when I was drinking it, I paired it with cheese curds with like a Chipotle ranch, and it was really good. And then just a cheeseburger, just a good cheeseburger, lettuce, tomato, onion.
Right, some government cheese
on there.
Yeah.
Smash burger. So you're talking 2 4-ounce patties.
Okay.
And I think that's perfect right there.
All right, I'm.
It is.
I'm intrigued now. Yeah.
It definitely is a food beer. It pairs well. Drinking it on its own, I was like, and it's for people that love pickles. Drinking it on its own, I was like, wow, this is good. I could drink this. But then when I actually paired it with a meal, I was like, oh, okay. makes sense now.
I mean, this is the year that Oscar Blues gave us a mustard beer with French's, and we've obviously had the pizza beer out there before. You've worked at breweries that have kitchens attached to them, though. Obviously, Barn Town, and then Brickstone before that. And I'm curious as to how much do you think about when you're creating a recipe of what's happening in the kitchen and how that can translate into a beer that you want to put out?
I think about it a lot. I really enjoy food, and I really love beer. In a setting like Barn Town, we're beer and cheeseburgers. We are farm to table pub food. So there, I think you could pretty well drink any beer, and it pairs good with a cheeseburger or a chicken sandwich and stuff like that. At Brickstone, I thought about it probably a little bit more just because we had, a bigger menu with pasta dishes, and, it was Greek owned. So the menu was like 17 pages long. Pasta dishes and chicken dishes and, other dishes. So there, when we were brewing, especially when I was over at the brew pub for the year, I was consciously thinking about how this would pair with a meal or a certain meal, and that way you could let the servers know, how to recommend stuff. I like it a lot. Food and beer.
Yeah. Because you mentioned earlier, brewing with different adjuncts, and obviously if you're making a pickle beer and you guys are doing blueberry puree and all sorts of stuff, are there ingredients that you're intrigued to work with in the food arena that you haven't yet?
So, kind of going back to what I said is, being a production brewer for the majority of my career so far, I'm really having a fun time now, just kind of getting into it with everything, all as far as different fruit purees, haven't messed around with herbs or too much, but, using, real coconut and different types of coconut and how they extract, how you're getting the extract, and how you're getting your flavor extracted from that, rather, and the time that it takes on those. If you put an ingredient in front of me and say you should brew a beer with this, I'll at least think about it.
So you also mix cocktails, right? And that's that you were a bartender. You've had a bunch of different jobs, but you've spent some time behind the stick and spent some time making cocktails.
Yeah,
and there's such a preciseness that's needed, I think, for a proper cocktail, and you can always tell the difference between one that's been slapped together or one that's actually been, really well crafted. And I imagine that there's, I don't know, the creativity that comes with that, but also the discipline that comes with that. And when you are thinking about a beer and you taste something for the first time, where does your mind go in the creation of a new beer recipe?
I think it's all about, and I hate it when people use the word balance overly too much.
Yeah.
But it is really, about the balance of everything, because you don't want it to lean one way too far. Like in our pastry sours, we toe that fine line between, you want the sweetness there so that you're understanding that this is recreated after a blueberry muffin, but you're also brewing a sour beer, so you want the acidity there.
Yeah.
Same with cocktails. I think the same goes for any IPAs or stouts you're brewing too. If you're, IPA, you looking at your hops and your grain, and you want you want that grain to be present. You want a nice, good mouthfeel off of it, but you also want your hops there, but you don't want them too bitter if you're brewing a West Coast an East Coast or New England IPA. I like I said, I hate it, but I think the word balance is key in all of that. And then there's sometimes when you just throw it out and you just fucking go for it, and throw as much vanilla in as you want, or coconut, and just smash everyone's face with those certain adjuncts.
Say budgets be damned. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. God, vanilla. Jesus Christ.
What's it going for these days? Do you know?
Last I saw, we were around like 300 a pound, maybe. Um,
Man.
so we kind of we'll like make our own like tincture from it, So we'll get a shitload of beans and we'll buy them when they're cheap and kind of start the soaking process to really get the flavor extracted over the course of a few months. So,
But that also gives sort of a better, I don't know. It makes the beer a little bit more personal, I guess, for you as you're making it.
mm-hmm.
I'm curious, is there a freight train going past you right now?
No, just the highway. Is it
Okay.
bad?
It's not great, but this is podcasting in the time of COVID. And I want to talk about your new show in just a minute, but you brought up the concept of, or the style of, New England IPA. And I think we're getting to a maturity point for that style. It's now a couple of years old. It is very quickly rising. Everybody's trying to put their own stamp on it. And for a while it was, let's make it hazy, let's make sure it has Citra Mosaic, and let's watch it fly off the shelves before it explodes, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then we've seen it mature more and more, and brewers have really started to refine the process or think about hop dosing rates. And the consumer, I think, is more savvy on it as well. It's not just enough to say, oh, we double dry hop this with 50 pounds of whatever. Those numbers don't seem to be quite as impactful as they were, even just, 18 months or 24 months ago. As you think about your New England IPA, what are you working towards to make it, one, your own, but two, a true representation of the style that makes you happy?
Yep. Yeah. So Neon is, the hops in there, Citra and Mosaic. And then going back to Brickstone, even our flagship Hazy there when we first started doing them was a blend of Citra and Mosaic and, something else, maybe, whatever it was. I can't remember now. But, when the style first came out, I really didn't think much of it. I thought it was going to be kind of a flash in the pan situation. Like the Brutes were when they finally came out. But, I thought it was, people just rushing beer and putting, Trubin beer in cans and just looking at these oxidized messes. And then I think, and I can't remember what beer it was, John, to be honest with you, that I had that I was like, oh, this is what people want in this. This is what people are describing here, a softer mouthfeel, a not so aggressive bitter finish to it. And so when we started making them, we just, at Brickstone, we were just trying different hop combinations. And now out here with Neon, they've been brewing Neon, since well before I got here. And it's just a nice complement of the kind of juicy hops without that bitter bite, but still, just a touch dry, so that it's not like cloyingly sweet throughout the beer. And then we do make those as well. We make those ones where we sweeten up the body, we mash a little hotter, we'll throw some, oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. We'll throw some extra sugars in there, maltodextrin, and try to get it sweeter. And, we will just kind of not throw hops at the wall, but, we'll think about it, but we'll push that, 5 to 6 pounds per barrel. I think any more than that, and you're just, going to get I don't like anything bigger than that myself. I think you can go the range on those beers. But for me, the ones that are best is like our Neon, it's here I go using that word balanced again. You have the soft, juicy mouthfeel, and it's just kind of a touch dry, just kind of easy drinking beer to me, at 6.5%.
There comes a point, though, where I guess inside the brewery, regardless of sales, right? You also have to just be happy with the beers that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you find the professional satisfaction with what goes out the door?
If Since I've been here, we've put 2 or 3 beers down the drain that we've not been happy with. I'm very honored to work somewhere where we do take that. Even if we are throwing weird adjuncts in it, if it doesn't turn out right, there's no point in serving it.
Yeah.
I think making sorry, somebody just like kind of pulled up to me. The guy just pulled over. I pulled over so I could talk a little bit better.
Oh, okay.
The
I wasn't sure if you were about to start a drag race, because that'd make for exciting radio here.
No, some truck just pulled in. I just pulled over in some parking lot. And they're like, "Are you ready?" I'm like, "I don't know who you are." But I think it's no matter what you're putting in beer, it has to be a product that you are willing to serve and you believe in, right? And I think all of our IPAs and beers we put out, however funky or kind of crazy they are, I believe it. That I trust that beer. I know that it's a good product that I stand behind and put my stamp on.
And I wish I heard more of that these days, though. I think that there's such a rush, and I think COVID has sort of changed that game a little bit as well, of just trying to keep your nose above water, so just sort of doing whatever you can. But what you just described strikes me as, I don't know, the long game and a smart one, as it were.
Yeah, I think once you're in the game for long enough, John, you can take those calculated risks and know that, even if it is a rushed product, that, okay, well, I've had success with this malt bill, with this hop schedule, so I'm going to keep that malt bill and maybe flip the hops a little bit.
Yeah.
We sit in a meeting every Monday, and we put out a beer early in COVID that I was absolutely in love with. He got great reviews, and Pete, the guy who founded and owns Barn Town, my good buddy, he was like, "I don't care for this beer. I don't like it." And it was more like kind of a style thing for us, at that point, because we did make we used a bunch of Galaxy, and sometimes you use a little too much Galaxy, you get a little bitey in there, and
yep.
It was a little bit of, it was a more dry IPA, and like I said, I absolutely dug it. And we sat there, and it was like, well, there's 3 of us that make these decisions, so where's the line on, is it acceptable or not? And great beer went over good, but one member of our team just happened to be the man who started it. Was like, I wasn't a big fan of that one, so he didn't think that it was a superior product.
Okay.
But he also trusted the brewers that he put in thing, and he was like, if you guys think this is completely good, then go for it.
Yeah.
And we did, and it was well received. I hate to use the metric that it sold out, but it sold out very quickly, in a number of days, and had great reviews. So, it's
hard to argue with that when you can see those results both in person and then on paper, or digital ink, as it were. Speaking of digital things, you recently launched a podcast, which surprisingly enough I'm not hosting, which I find just weird and bizarre. But your new podcast is called The Maker and Me, and I'd like to know a little bit more about it and the conversations that you're having, and the void that you're trying to fill. Yeah.
When I lived in Chicago, I started this in Chicago about a year and a half ago. But at the time I was living in Bourbonnais, and when I started it, it was kind of around the time that Pete had called me and been like, "Hey, are you ready to come out to Iowa?" So it was kind of
it's a call life that everybody waits for. Hey, are you ready to come to Iowa?
Well, it was if I can talk on that point for a second.
Yeah, of course.
I tell Pete, and I tell people all the time, if and he didn't even ask. He said, "Hey, do you know anybody?" One of their assistant brewers had just left, just put his notice in. He was moving to Florida. And so he texted me. He's like, "Hey, you know anybody in Florida that you would recommend, or in Iowa that you would recommend come work here?" And I was like, I don't, no, not really. But, if he'd been talking about opening a second location, I was like, I'm ready to come out. And he was like, whoa, what's going on here? And I tell him, if he had texted me the day before or the day after, I would have just given him a no, I don't know anybody text. And that would have been the end of it. But it was for some reason that day, that exact moment that he texted me, that I was like, you know what? I think I could use a change in my life. And so it was a weird time. I just started this podcast, bought all this equipment, spent a lot of money on it. My wife wasn't too thrilled with that. But I was down in Bourbonnais, which is about an hour south of Chicago. So, between being a father, full-time father, a, full-time employee, I was on the board of directors for the Illinois Craft Brewers Guild for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Doing that, working with FOBAB, there was just always something going on that took up more time than I had to, drive to the city at 5:00 and deal with rush hour to talk to somebody for an hour or so and come back. So when I finally got out here, I was like, you know what? I don't know anybody out here other than the 3 people that I work with. So this is going to be the absolute perfect time for me to finally get this podcast going. So yeah, it's called The Maker and Me. There's so many beer podcasts, right? Where it's the same.
Yeah, no, I'm aware.
Where it's it's the same conversation. But I looked and I was like, well, these are the people that I know, and these are the people that I enjoy talking to. So I started digging into it, and I was like, well, I was a bartender for a lot of years, and I know a lot of people that mix cocktails that really can shoot the shit, and I know a few distillers too, and so I was like, well, let's work around that. And so I, the industry, the service industry, bartenders, brewers, distillers, owners of these businesses, the cellarmen, packaging people. My tagline is they all have a story to tell, and I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, I was like, what are these people? I said, at the end of the day, we're all makers. We're creators of something. So I came up with the name The Maker and Me. And it's really good. And since I've been out here, it's kind of shifted a little bit to where it's still very industry focused. But like tonight I'm sitting down with a coffee roaster, a local coffee roaster. Last week I had a guy who's a barber in a band, but he's a creator. He's has a craft that he is extremely passionate about. I've talked to a guy who has a hydroponic farm, lettuce farm. And
lettuce.
So it's kind of actual lettuce. Yes.
The devil's lettuce?
No, that one's coming in a few weeks.
Okay.
So I've got that one on the schedule. But there's so many people out there that create, that are makers, that have a craft that they really care about. And that's where I'm trying to hit with The Maker and Me, is to try to shed light on those people and, their passion for what they do.
Right now we're hearing a lot about the impacts that COVID-19 has had on the hospitality industry, and you've been on both sides of the bar now, and you're in the back, and you've worked in restaurants and breweries and beyond. What do you see the outlook like right now?
It's pretty disheartening to see, colleagues and friends of mine who had to lay off entire staffs and, are closing their businesses. It's not something I like to look at. I'm a pretty cheerful, optimist 90% of the time. And, 6 months in, even though we're not really returning to normalcy, I'm finally seeing myself get worn down enough to where, it just breaks my heart. And I do my work every day, and I try to just put it behind me when I go home and just think about, like you said, what makes me happy right now. And I just try to be in the moment when I'm at home now, when I'm not at work, and try to put all this bad shit behind me. And it's just really sad. I mean, I don't even, know what to say for the people. Luckily we haven't had to lay anybody off. We saw a downturn in business for sure when we were to go only. But we are in a nice suburb surrounded by a good medium income.
Yeah.
So, we felt the impact, but not nearly as much as, some of our colleagues in the industry throughout the country.
What are you looking forward to getting back to, festival-wise aside, when everything is lifted?
Oh man, just being able to hug my friends and not feel bad about it, just being entertained with people, being able to go to a bar and sit down at it and, not have to worry about, being 6 feet away from somebody. I'm a very outgoing, social person.
Yeah, you are.
By nature. And, this whole time I've been spending a lot of time at home, which is wonderful. My wife loves it. My kids absolutely love it. And I've really been enjoying it. But at the same time, that inner, Alex is just scratching at me going, we need to do something. And the traveling, we had so many trips planned for this year.
Yeah.
All across the country, that we've had to cancel. And that's just selfish, that's like, I wish I could go on these trips, but yeah, I just want to get out and see my friends and see and meet new people. That's what I really love is interacting with people. And brewing, when I got into this 7 years ago, John, I didn't know where brewing would take me. I didn't know that I would travel to more states than I ever have in my life, or meet the people that I have, or, have the pedigree, meet the pedigree of people that I have, and get invited to state houses and governors, homes and all these things. Brewing took me there, and I'm very thankful for it.
So I need you to help me with one thing before we go. At the beginning of COVID-19, there was a Facebook group that was started called Quarantined Beer Chugs. And yeah. I joined it not knowing what I was getting into. And then it was fun for about 3 weeks, and then it just got sad in a lot of ways. But you, my friend, were among the bright spots of that subpage on Facebook, and I'm curious as to your approach. I've never been good at shotgunning beers or chugging beers. I'm poor at it. So how can I up my game? You're a master of consuming beers in 6 seconds or less. Where should I start? How can I be a better beer chugger?
I've actually gotten worse at chugging beer the more I go. Some years ago, and I hate to say that, when I in my 20s, I could really put them down. And I amongst my friends, I'm known as one of the faster drinkers there are.
I can drink fast. I think there's a difference between drinking fast and chugging
and
a beer.
Throwing it back.
Yeah,
okay.
I can make a beer in a pint glass disappear faster than just about everybody at the table. I can lap people on beers that way, but I'm not opening up my gullet and just letting it all slide down.
I don't know. It's not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. It really hurts when you do it. You're inhaling and you're aspirating this beer as you're trying to, get a few fake internet points. But
yeah,
it's, to me, it's part of the beer industry I think it's fun. I try not to take myself too seriously, but I know when it needs to be taken seriously, So
there's
man, I will agree with you. That page was awesome for like 2 weeks. And I was like, this is really cool. People from around the nation. And then I was just like, okay, never mind.
Yeah, it just got like really sad of just, people showing some of the really dark sides of beer or just some of the comments and everything else. So yeah. I had to extract myself from it. But you were a bright spot for those first 2 weeks. And I was trying to build up the courage to actually do my own. But then, alas.
I think I was shirtless in most of those as well. So
you were. There's a couple of ones of you in front of your bathroom mirror that are forever seared in my memory. Yeah. See, you had forgotten. Those of us who had to watch it will never forget. Alex, thanks so much for sitting down and driving around and talking to me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I listened to the show and I really like it. But yeah, it's I really appreciate it. I always like talking shop and just giving my view on things.
Awesome. And everybody should be subscribing to and listening to the Maker and Me podcast. You're putting that out weekly now, right?
Yeah, they come out on Mondays. I only eat cheeseburgers once a week, and I only eat cheeseburgers on Mondays, so it's called Cheeseburger Mondays when we release our when we released the show. So,
Well-
and now as of today, we're on Apple and Spotify. So,
Well, now everybody knows where to get it. So those episodes are up, and we're recording this on a Monday for release on a Wednesday, so I'm going to let you go and record and eat your cheeseburger, and thanks again.
awesome. Thanks, John. Have a good one.
That's Alex Lovinggood of Barn Town Brewing in Iowa. Make sure to check out his podcast, The Maker and Me, available where fine podcasts are found. And before we go, a reminder that this show is produced by Beer Edge. Check out beeredge.com and subscribe to the newsletter, and also download the Beer Edge podcast hosted by Andy Crouch with new episodes every week. Also check out Steal This Beer and the BYO Nano podcast. And please don't forget to go onto Apple Podcasts or wherever you download and leave a review of this show. If you have questions, suggestions, or guests you'd like to hear, you can email me at johnholl, that's JOHNHOLL, at beeredge.com, or reach out on Twitter at John_Hall. Nate Schwarber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed the logo, and my thanks to you for listening. I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.